calling case number CC66 of 2004. The inquest into the Highgate Massacre into the deaths of Stanley Hacking, Douglas William Cage, Royce Michael Wheeler, Dion Wayne Harry, Derek John Ritter.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lord.
We're back. Welcome back.
Yes.
We choose to continue with the hearing into the inquest into the Highgate incident. The parties have kindly prepared a schedule, proposed schedule for the conduct of the proceedings, which I had a look at, and for which I thank them. And we will then endeavor to keep to the proposed schedule as far as practically possible. So that having been said, perhaps you just want to place yourself on record again. Will you do that for the statements, Bosman?
My Lord, it is Ms. Bosman, Mr. Governor, Mr. Colton, Ms. Mbandaba, Mr. Massacre, and Mr. Number for the state.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen, ladies.
Good morning.
Welcome back, as I said. Full compliment. What about you, Mr. Vani?
As the court pleases, my Lord, I appear on behalf of the families of the Highgate Hotel Massacre, together with my learned colleague, Ms. Richards, instructed by Cliff Decker-Hoffman.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to your team as well. Still a full compliment also. Those are good signs. Ms. Bosman, what do you propose? Shall we get into this first witness?
My Lord, at this stage, I think that my colleagues are all in agreement that the next witness would be Mr. Robert John Tyrrell. He is a witness on behalf of the families, and he has already submitted an affidavit which is contained in the record at Annexure HH.
HH. Very well.
Thank you, my Lord.
All right, so Mr. Vani, I assume you will, sorry, for something you want to add?
I'm sorry, my Lord, I forgot to mention the investigating officer, unfortunately, is currently seeking, well, he's at the doctor, and he will be here as soon as he is done. And we would like to, if there is time after the two witnesses which have to give evidence today, we can ask him to give a report on all of his investigations, which he has done since the last hearing.
Very well.
Thank you, Madam.
Let's hope we able to attend. Mr. Vani?
As the court pleases, my Lord, before we call Mr. Tyrrell to the stand, just a couple of housekeeping matters. Mr. Tyrrell, in his report, refers to a number of underlying source documents which we wish to hand up as exhibits. And perhaps it might be helpful, my Lord, if I were to hand up the bundle now, and then I will take you through the exhibits. So firstly, my Lord, just for your convenience, and we've also shared it with our colleagues from the state, we have a high-level exhibit list, which we will be updating in due course as more exhibits are added to the record. We've also just provided for your convenience the confirmatory affidavit and report of Mr. Robert John Tyrrell as Exhibit HH. All of that was handed up at the last hearing. And my Lord, in Mr. Robert Tyrrell's report, he makes reference to a number of exhibits. The first one being an Excel spreadsheet, which is titled APLA Analysis Spreadsheet. And my Lord, that has been handed up as Exhibit II. My Lord, we apologize in advance because in order to keep the document within manageable proportions, the type size has been reduced to the smallest possible. So, my Lord, if you have to use a magnifying glass, we apologize in advance. My Lord, the next exhibit is a report titled the Louise Flanagan report. There's a confirmatory affidavit from her. It's titled Attack on the Highgate Hotel, 1st of May 1993, the Eastern Cape Context. My Lord, that affidavit and report is labeled Exhibit JJ. My Lord, we did share this report with the investigating officer and our colleagues from the state some months back for purposes of investigating certain leads. And indeed, the investigating officer has been doing just that, and Captain Peterson will report on his inquiries in due course. My Lord, it's quite a lengthy report, and it contains a great deal of contextual information relating to developments in the Eastern Cape in the late 80s and early to mid 1990s. My Lord, we don't expect the court to plough through this report, and indeed we're only making reference to it because Mr. Tyrrell, in his report, makes occasional reference to the timeline or chronology that is attached to Ms. Flanagan's report. And we have flagged the timeline, which is towards the end of that document. So for the moment, we're not expecting your Lordship or our colleagues to go through the entire report, because it deals with a great deal of contextual information of an historical nature dealing with the entire region, which is useful from an academic perspective, but we will only be making reference to the chronology. And Lord, the next exhibit we have referred to as the Hernus Creel Statement. It's a statement by the Minister of Law and Order, Mr. Hernus Creel, which was released to the media on the 27th of May, 1993. And in that statement, he dealt with alleged attacks by the PAC and APLA. And in that statement, which is a very detailed one, he includes a list of incidents. And again, that statement is referred to as a secondary source in the expert report of Mr. Tyrrell. And my Lord, we have labelled that statement as Exhibit KK. And then finally, my Lord, we have a list which is titled Confirmed APLA Attacks. It's a table. There are 36 incidents listed in that table. My Lord, these are incidents in which our expert regards as confirmed because they were the subject of amnesty applications before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We have titled that exhibit as Exhibit LL. So that concludes the list of exhibits we wish to hand up this morning for the purposes of the evidence of Mr. Robert John Tyrrell. And with the leave of your lordship, we'd like to call him to the stand.
Very well.
So state your full name, please.
Robert John Tyrrell.
Do you have any objection to taking the oath? Do you consider the oath binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give in front of the court will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Tyrrell.
Good morning, Your Honor. My Lord, rather.
You liberty to sit down if you wish.
Thank you.
All right, you see that in there.
Thank you. I
All right.
appreciate it.
Mr. Varney.
As the court pleases. Mr. Tyrrell, I see you're quite tall and you're bending over. And his lordship has allowed you to take a seat if you prefer.
Thank you.
But if you want to stand up and stretch, you're also entitled to do that.
Thanks.
Mr. Tyrrell, firstly, thank you for making the trip down to East London to assist this court in making sense of the horrendous massacre that took place at the Highgate Hotel back in 1993. Before we proceed, we need to establish your expertise in this matter. You have put up an affidavit and a report, and perhaps let's just get you to confirm that this is your report and affidavit. You have a copy of your confirmatory affidavit, which is, my lord, that's Exhibit HH. You confirm that this is an affidavit that you made out?
Yes, it is.
And the report that is titled Analysis of APLA-Linked Attacks Compiled by Foundation for Human Rights. Do you confirm that this is a report that you compiled and oversaw?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Let's now turn to your expertise. What is your current employment and title?
So, at this time, I'm the Senior Program Officer for Research at the Foundation for Human Rights.
Thank you. And let's start with your academic qualifications. Can you just take the court through your various degrees?
Sure. So, I have a Bachelor of Social Science in Public Policy from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which I attained in 2006. It included research methodology in a policy context, which covered both qualitative and quantitative research methodologies. I also hold a master's degree in social science from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which I attained in 2008, and it included a study in qualitative textual analysis. Professionally, I was a research associate at the South African Human Rights Commission from 2014 to 2026, where I engaged in human rights monitoring and advocacy. I have been employed at the Foundation for Human Rights since 2016 and was appointed Senior Program Officer for Research this year. My work is focused extensively on documenting human rights violations, with a particular emphasis over the past 2 years on gender-based violence and femicide. This included co-authoring 2 national GBVF reports, which use surveys to analyze prevalence, conviction rates, and perpetrator profiles. These surveys included data on access to socioeconomic rights, GBV incidents, perpetrators reporting patterns, and conviction rates. The first survey had 2,038 participants, and the second had 5,433. The reason why I'm mentioning the numbers is to show that I'm familiar with using large sample sizes. This yielded a large amount of quantitative data that was analyzed in a way that shows the pressing human rights issues we face in South Africa. I also serve in the LGBTQIA+ National Task Team. That's and the LGBTQI plus rapid response team, where I collaborate monthly with stakeholders such as SAPS, the MPA, and various civil society organizations, where we look at hate crimes against LGBTQI plus people. Yeah, well, I have not directly worked on the TRC myself. My expertise lies in quantitative research methodologies, as demonstrated in the GBVF surveys that I've led. In short, my specialty is designing, conducting, and analyzing large-scale research on human rights violations. Basically, I translate complex human rights data into actionable findings.
Thank you. That's an impressive record indeed. Now, Mr. Tyrrell, you were approached by Cliff Decker Hofmeyr to compile a research report. Can you indicate to the court what it is you were asked to do?
So essentially, the main question was, if we look at APLA attacks in and around the periods 1991 to 1994, and if we look at the Highgate incident of 1993, to what extent can we say that the Highgate massacre matches the modus operandi of confirmed APLA attacks in that time period? And that's what we've based our report on.
Okay, so that's the central question you were asked to probe. Let's turn to the approach that you adopted, the methodology and process. Can you take the court through your methodology and explain why you used that particular approach?
Sure. Okay, so firstly, we identified incidents that were temporarily linked to the 1993 massacre. Temporarily means within the time period 1991 to 1994, with a documented connection to APLA. So essentially what that means is that it may have appeared in the TRC, it may have appeared in the Creel statement, or the Flanagan chronology, where somebody may have alleged that APLA was involved in it. So that was our starting point. Then we took that information from that spreadsheet, and we went through all of the amnesty applications and TRC documents, and we did a keyword search to basically for APLA, and to basically check the incidents to see if they appeared in the TRC documents. We ended up isolating 24 incidents where APLA members sought amnesty. We then expanded from 24 the data set using the information in the Creel statement, which has been explained, and the Flanagan report chronology. We entered this information to a master spreadsheet, which we refined further by focusing on incidents that occurred in the time frame. We ended up with a list of 64 incidents. So at that point, these were not confirmed incidents. These were simply incidents that APLA was alleged to have been involved with. For each of these 64 incidents, an initial attribution of APLA was established by an individual association with APLA applying for amnesty before the TRC Amnesty Committee, and or an incident attributed to APLA either by Creel or the Flanagan chronology. So essentially, to the best of our knowledge, the list of 64 incidents is a complete list of APLA attacks in the given period. Our analysis represents a good faith systemic effort to document and categorize incidents of political violence between 1991 and 1994 based on the available evidence. While we cannot claim exhaustive completeness, that was a very chaotic and turbulent time period, we maintain the findings of our report provide a reasonable and methodologically sound approach.
I see in your report you distinguish between primary and secondary sources. Why did you do that?
Okay. So our primary sources were the TRC hearings and associated documentation. That was, if it appeared in there, that we would take as confirmation. So the reason why we did that was because of the issues in the time period. Although you could look at, and we did, the Creel statement from the Minister of Law and Order at the time. This was an apartheid era minister, and I'm not making any accusations or anything, I'm simply saying that we were not prepared to take his statements as completely true, given the influence of the apartheid state on the minister. Likewise, we were also not prepared to look at contemporary media reports, because as we know, during the time period, the media were quite heavily influenced by the apartheid state. So we wanted to make sure our data was as secure as possible through using the TRC documentation.
Thank you. My Lord, just to be clear and to assist the court, so the 64 incidents in the Excel spreadsheet are both the confirmed as well as the unconfirmed incidents. But Mr. Tyrrell and our team of attorneys have helpfully put up a second list of the 36 incidents in Exhibit LL. According to Mr. Tyrrell, those are confirmed incidents because their names appear in amnesty applications or TRC hearings, either human rights violations committee or an amnesty hearing. So let's proceed, Mr. Tyrrell. And before we go deeper into your methodology, I understand that there's a small discrepancy between the Excel spreadsheet list and your report itself. Can you explain that to the court, please?
Sure. So we compiled the report, we did the analysis, and then after we had concluded that process, we realized it would be quite useful to essentially record, give a list of all the incidents that happened, and then we had appended that to the end of our report. In going through it, I realized that in that list, not in the analysis, but in that list, it included a reference to the Lichtenstein battle, which was 1988. 1988 is outside of our time period, so that didn't appear in the analysis. And I realized that we also neglected to insert the second Highgate incident, which happened in 1994. So there are 64 incidents, but that list just needs to be amended. And likewise, in the Excel spreadsheet, it lists 65 incidents. And what happened there was when we were doing the counting, we skipped a number. We went 13, 15. And as we know, it goes 13, 14, 15. And because of that, the Excel spreadsheets lists 65 incidents instead of 64. But because we didn't, because we did this after the analysis, it didn't affect the analysis in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Tyrrell. My Lord, in the Excel spreadsheet that has been provided to your Lordship, and our learned colleagues, the numbering has been corrected. Now, turning to the question of data collection, Mr. Tyrrell, you refer in your report to data points. Now, to the uninitiated, if you could just explain what you mean by a data point. Let's first deal with that. What is
Sure.
a data point?
Okay, so essentially, let me walk you through the process. So the first question was, how do you determine what is an APLA attack and what isn't? And so we sat down and we said to ourselves, in an ideal world, what points of data, what things can we look for that would help us determine whether this was indeed an APLA-related incident? And we came up with a wide variety of things. Like, for instance, the accuracy. Like, for instance, the accents of the people involved, the language spoken, the type of clothes. How quickly did the police respond? Things like that. Unfortunately, in the real world, we didn't have all of these fantastic pieces of information that we were hoping for. And as always happens when you're doing research, you realize that you need to just focus a bit more on what's truly important. So in the end, we believe, because this is the information that we actually have access to, and because it seemed very important to us, we believe that there were four main things that were of extreme importance. So the first one was the number of perpetrators. The second is the target selection. The third is claiming responsibility. And the last is weapons used. Now, when we look at the number of perpetrators, should I go into the analysis or should I just leave it at that? Point?
Just hang for a moment.
Sure.
My Lord, if you wish to follow in Mr. Tyrrell's report, on pages 4 and 5. All right. So you've now mentioned the key data points that you and your team decided to focus upon. Perhaps you can explain to my Lord why you decided ultimately on those particular data points, and then we will interrogate each one.
Sure. So as I said, the four main ones were number of perpetrators. The idea being APLA would have a certain modus where they would use a certain number of people to commit an attack. An anomalous number of perpetrators may indicate that APLA was not involved. For instance, if there were 20 attacks, for the sake of argument, APLA, I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, has had any attacks with 20 people. So that straight up, we would have said, that seems a little bit strange. Target selection. So target selection was quite important. So when you're analyzing data and you've got 64 incidents, you need to find a way of, again, focusing a bit more so we have a relevant analysis. And so what we did was we differentiated into a number of ways of seeing things, including attacks on police, attacks on SADF. Obviously, because the Highgate massacre didn't involve an attack on police or SADF, that wasn't particularly useful to us. But attacks on civilians obviously were. So we split the attacks on civilians into 3 different types. Again, this is to help our analysis. So we had civilians on farms. So obviously in South Africa, your farms tend to be isolated. The reason why we split them into the 3 different categories is that the methodology, the tactics that you would use on a specific target differ. If you're attacking a farm, you're going to have a certain number of constraints that you have to operate within. For instance, quite a lot of these attacks were at night. Somebody would throw a petrol bomb, and that would be the end of it. And that's completely different from civilians in transit. And that's when somebody's driving. So what they would do is that APLA would essentially ambush cars. They would wait and they would see a vehicle, and then they would attack that vehicle. And obviously, again, attacking a moving vehicle is fundamentally different from attacking a farm. But those are all very different from attacking civilians not on farms, in stationary locations. Again, because you would use a different tactic. So if you're attacking a farm in the middle of the night, yeah, maybe you can throw a petrol bomb. But if you're attacking civilians in an urban area, like the Highgate massacre, you have to act in a different way because police is close by. You're in a constrained environment. There's a greater possibility of you getting caught. You can't. A petrol bomb is not particularly. If you throw a petrol bomb at the side of a hotel, you are unlikely to have a high casualty rate. So you can't really use the same tactics. You have to use different tactics, and that's kind of why we split it into things. Yeah, so that's why we split the civilians. If we hadn't have done that, then what we would have probably ended up having, and I'm just by way of example, we would have seen a preponderance of attacks with petrol bombs, for instance. And that wouldn't have been particularly helpful to having a really nice and focused analysis on attacks that were similar to the Highgate massacre.
All right, and then the other criteria, I think you've now dealt with target type and victim and casualties, unless there's anything further you wish to add there.
I would just say there was the claiming of responsibility was quite important too. Without going too much into it, because of course there's a report. You're very welcome to read the report if you want to. go through it. Fundamentally, APLA claims 80% of the time would claim for attacks that matched this type of target. So the fact that they didn't, and that didn't come in the TRC process, nobody went to TRC and said, I was responsible for the Highgate massacre. That was important as well. I don't want to get too much into it, but one of the things, as somebody who's not particularly familiar with the TRC process, one of the things that stood out to me was, well, I wouldn't want to come forward and say I'd killed civilians. It's not a nice thing to say. But if you look at the TRC testimonies, we have people who were involved with, I think it was I may be saying this incorrectly, the Bahia Church massacre. People shooting and planting bombs and whatnot. So that type of thing wouldn't have deterred them going forward. But I'm not going to get too much into that. Essentially, just to say, we noted that the Highgate massacre wasn't, APLA never claimed responsibility for it.
All right, well, we are going to return to each one of your selected data points in some more detail shortly. And then lastly, you had weapon types.
Yes, the weapon types are also very important. As I've explained, the type of methodology you use to attack a certain target would differ depending on the target. So what you need to look at, well, what we felt was important was, very important in fact, was the type of weapons that were used. Because a weapon is a physical object. But it's not any type of physical object. It's a specific thing that's designed to create harm. It's dangerous to handle. You need to be trained in its usage. You need to have sufficient munitions to train yourself in it, to practice, and to actually undertake the attack. So if a weapon appeared in the Highgate massacre that was not used regularly in that time period for that type of target, that would seem a bit strange. If a weapon appeared in the Highgate massacre that had never been used before in any APLA attack, that would also have been significant. So weapon was quite significant for us.
All right, now, before we dive into the meat of your report, as with any survey or research project or analysis, there are always going to be some limitations and shortcomings. And I see in your report that you do list these limitations. My lord, it's paragraph 2.4.5 on page 7 of Mr. Tyrrell's report. Can you take the court through the limitations of the research you conducted?
Yeah, sure, of course. So some of the statements that we used, firstly, we trusted to a certain extent, to a large extent, I should say, the TRC hearings, specifically when a perpetrator would come forward and say, yes, I did this. We took that as being true. That is an assumption that we made, and it is a limitation. It's possible that somebody might have gone to the TRC. They may have misremembered. They may have misrepresented themselves. Unfortunately, we were not able to analyze in detail every single statement to find that was true. It was simply sufficient for us that it appeared in the TRC reports. And we had to do this because the type of information that you can get on that in that time period is limited by our temporal distance from the fact. It was a long time ago. And the chaotic nature of the time period, records can go missing. But also, I think as I've explained before, we are aware that the media and government ministers perhaps couldn't be trusted in that time. So that is a limitation. We were quite upfront about that. If somebody didn't come to the TRC, then we would not have been able to confirm it.
Is that what you refer in your report to as source bias?
Yeah. Yes. It speaks to data constraints. As I said, essentially we're constrained in that we can only look at the information that we have, which is the large part of TRC documents. So if it didn't appear there, then we wouldn't have been able to analyze it. I mean, that's fairly obvious, but it's worth saying. It's important being clear about your assumptions. So yeah. As I had mentioned, critical details were often missing. we had wanted to do a really thorough analysis. We had wanted to go through a whole lot of different ways of doing it. Like I said, what accent, for instance? How accurate were they? What language did they use? But when we were going through the data, that just wasn't there in most of the cases. We had to reduce ourselves to the specific data points that we used. And that is a limitation. It means that while we are very confident in our report, I suppose this is more of a professional thing. You always feel you can do better. Although, given the scrutiny that we put these documents under, I'm extremely confident that we did a really good job on that. And also verification gaps. I mean, it goes back to the issue of if they didn't come to the TRC, then we wouldn't know about it. That's the fundamental problem but that's the fundamental limitation that we're working under. Every research report has limitations. Just because you are limited doesn't necessarily mean it's an issue. The important point is to acknowledge the limitation and work around it, and design your study so that at the very least you're upfront about the problems.
Well, thank you for being upfront about the potential shortcomings of your report. I think we're now at a point, Mr. Turrell, where we can dive into the meat of your report and look at your actual analysis and conclusions. And then we'll be now at page 8 of Mr. Turrell's report. So, Mr. Turrell, you have a heading, APLA linked attacks 1991 through to 1994, and you've provided some very helpful tables in this section. I think it would be useful if you were to highlight some of the numbers for the court in relation to the APLA incidents between the years of 1991 and 1994.
Okay, so would it perhaps be useful to talk about provinces, or?
Well, I think we should focus specifically on the Eastern Cape. We don't have to read through all of them, but where the Eastern Cape features, I think we should highlight that for the court, if you will.
All right, so essentially, we're talking about confirmed APLA attacks, 36 of them. Specifically Eastern Cape, 6 occurred in 1992, 3 in 1993, and 3 in 1994, for a total of 12 incidents.
Can you just mention which table you're referring to?
Sure, sorry, that's page 9, confirmed APLA incidents by year and province. It's the one table that appears on page 9.
Is that table 3.2?
3.2, yes.
Thank you. And if we just look at the table preceding that, 3.1, these are both the confirmed and unconfirmed. Could you highlight the Eastern Cape figures there as well?
Sure. So for all incidents, so that is confirmed and unconfirmed. In the Eastern Cape, there were no attacks recorded in 1991. There were 18 recorded in 1992, 3 in 1993, and 3 in 1994.
And in your report, you distinguish, I suppose, a pattern or trend between these two tables. Could you just draw the attention of the court to those patterns?
So, in the Eastern Cape, that would appear to be the main, not the exclusive, but the primary focus of confirmed APLA incidents, for a total of 12. So they do appear to have been active in the Eastern Cape, particularly in 1992, and to a lesser extent in 1993 and 1994. They were active elsewhere, but as I said, the main focus of their activities was in the Eastern Cape in that time period.
Thanks. In table 3.1, there appears to be quite a dramatic drop-off between 1992 and then 1993 and 1994. But the drop-off isn't as dramatic in the confirmed incidents in table 3.2.
If you ask if we are wondering why, the answer is I'm not going to be able to speculate on, because this is based on the data that we use, the TSC hearings and whatnot. So unless they consistently asked during the hearings, why did you not attack in this time period, that would not have come up. So you are correct in saying it does slope off quite a lot. But as to the reason why, that I'm unfortunately unable to speculate on.
All right, now let's turn to your paragraph 3.2, attack targets. You've already indicated that you've distinguished between certain targets. And again, you've come up with certain figures. Can you bring to the attention of the court highlights of the numbers you've been able to extract in relation to attacks on targets?
Sure. So I'm going to limit myself specifically, I think, well, I'm not going to speak about police, SADF members or post officers, because that's not what the Highgate Massacre is about. I'm likewise not going to focus too much on attacks on civilians and farms or civilians and transports. I think I've explained why we didn't do that. So a large amount of attacks, the most common target was civilians in non-farm structures or the police. What's interesting about this is when you look at the target selection and you look at incidents similar to the Highgate Massacre, of the 19 incidents, 15 of them we were able to confirm to the TRC. So that means almost 80% of the time when APRA attacked the target, similar to the Highgate Hotel, they would claim responsibility in some way, shape, or form. So I think that's fairly significant. And again, you would have to ask yourself, how was that seen in the Highgate Massacre? Yeah.
And it does seem that, again, the largest number of incidents came from the Eastern Cape between
Yes.
1991 and 1994. We still have quite a bit to get through. My Lord, I see we're approaching the 11 o'clock tea time before we start the next section, but this would be a good time for the adjournment.
All right. Reminding you that you're still under.
Thank you.
As the court pleases. Mr. Tyrrell, before the tea break, we were going through your big data points to highlight facts and numbers and stats that would be of interest to this inquiry. My Lord, just to assist the court, we are currently on page 10 of Mr. Tyrrell's report. And now we're going to be turning to the next big data point, which is a number of perpetrators. That's a paragraph 3.3. So, Mr. Tyrrell, could you assist the court with this particular data point, number of perpetrators, and highlight any interesting facts and conclusions in relation to this criteria for the court?
Sure. Okay. So number of perpetrators is fairly self-explanatory. These are the people who are physically present during the incidents or attacks. It doesn't include things like people who were involved in the planning process. It's people who were physically there. But when we look at things, for confirmed cases, incidents rather, the majority of it was either 1 or 2 perpetrators, confirmed APLA. That was 19%, or 3 or 4, 61%. So the vast majority of number of perpetrators for an APLA attack would be either essentially between 1 and 4, with more likely to be 3 to 4 perpetrators. So again, if you compare the Highgate massacre, you would ask how many perpetrators, and then you would look at that and see, does that match? So for sake of argument, 2 perpetrators would match, 4 perpetrators would also match. 3 or 4 perpetrators would match better than 1 or 2.
And in this case, according to the evidence we have, there were at least 2 identified perpetrators that were cited on the scene. You mentioned that the data on this data set is somewhat less complete. Can you just explain that finding?
Can you clarify what you mean by that?
So you say the data on the number of perpetrators involved in each incident is somewhat less complete and you say in 23 cases we have not been able to find this information.
Absolutely. So, okay. So the issue there is that in some instances, especially with regards to attacks, let's say at night, and especially with regards to the unconfirmed, it wasn't clear how many people were involved. So it would be a case of this attack happened. If it didn't appear in the TRC information, then we won't have people saying there were 4 of us. But even when you look at some of the hearings, even then it can be a little bit murky about what exactly happened. So again, the number of perpetrators to us wasn't determinative. It's an interesting factor, but in and of itself, it's not particularly crucial for looking at the modus.
Thank you. All right, let's turn to the other big data point. This is at page 11 of Mr. Terrell's report, paragraph 3.4. Types of weapons. And you indicate that multiple weapon types were used. Can I ask you again to highlight your key conclusions on this data set?
Sure. So essentially, we looked at the type of weapons that were used in a variety of different cases. We found that in the time period, the most common type of ballistic weapon tended to be, at least for the confirmed cases, would have been an R4 and R5 rifle. AK-47 was used, but to a much lesser extent. And when we, again, the use of AK-47, I believe I'm correct in saying that there was no incident, I think it was after 1992, of APLA using an AK-47 for this type of target. But they did use an AK-47, 2 of them, to attack police officers in 1992, and they did use it to attack civilians traveling in a school bus in the Eikenhof area of Johannesburg in 19th of March 1993. But again, that was not in the Eastern Cape, and that was a completely different target type. So we don't consider that to be an indication that they were using AK-47s in attacks during the time period on that specific type of target. So the use of AK-47s, I think, is anomalous. But what stood out for me even more was the use of a tear gas.
Well, let's not jump the gun. We're coming to explosives and tear gas shortly. Can I ask you to, first let's focus on the confirmed cases. We were talking about ballistic weapon types set out in your table 3.5. Can you actually highlight the numbers and percentages of R4/R5 and AK-47s?
Sure. So the R4, R5 and the time period was used 36% of the time, the AK-47 was used 10% of the time. Firearm not specified was 18, so that's when they would say a firearm was used, but they won't have details on it. Pistol revolver was used 20% of the time. A rifle grenade was used 10% of the time. Submachine gun 4%, shotgun 2%. So these are for the confirmed cases. If we're looking at AK-47s for unconfirmed, that jumps to 30%. And in fact, when you look at unconfirmed, the AK-47 was more likely to be used than an R5 or an R4 for the unconfirmed. Those were the cases the incidents that we couldn't definitively state that they were APLA. So I find that to be quite interesting. But overall, the type of weapon, ballistic weapon that was used most frequently, as I said, was the R5 or R4 or a pistol, rather than your AK-47.
All right, let's now turn to explosive weapon types. And if you could do the similar exercise and take the court through those numbers.
Sure. So for APLA confirmed incidents, 64% of the time they did include the use of a grenade. 26% of the time they did include the use of a petrol bomb. Unspecified explosives is 11% of the time. There was an incident of the use of a limpet mine, but that was not confirmed to be an APLA attack. That was I think it was a Spur restaurant that was used to kill quite a lot of people. Yes, so in terms of explosive weapons, you will see that this list does not include any tear gas. And we noticed that in all of the incidents that were confirmed APLA, nobody ever used tear gas.
Right. And we are aware that in the Highgate massacre incident, a grenade as well as a tear gas canister was used.
Yes.
So in all your surveys, using both your primary and secondary sources, you were unable to find a single incident of tear gas being employed by an alleged APLA. Correct.
Yes. So specifically, if we're talking, okay. So the way we handled the data was when we were creating these tables, especially for the confirmed and unconfirmed, we looked through the TRC databases, especially again for the confirmed, and there was no incidence of the use of tear gas by APLA, even in unconfirmed. It just didn't come up, which was one of the things that stood out for us. The reason why that's important, as I've said before. Let's say, for sake of argument, based on the Creel statement, tear gas was used, tear gas grenade. So that means that there was one tear gas grenade used. But in preparation for this attack, which seemed to have been quite professionally done, you would have to train, which means it's likely that there was more than one tear gas grenade in the hands of the people who did this attack. And the fact that APLA never used it really does stand out. If you're going to do a high-profile attack like this, why would you use a weapon that you've never used before? Without wanting to speculate, I'll just say that the use of the tear gas did stand out for me as being quite anomalous indeed.
All right, let's now turn to your final data point, and that is casualties, which you outline at page 12 of your report. Your main conclusions there?
Okay, so basically, a lot of civilians were killed or injured in the attacks. 1 in 3 incidents result in the death of civilians, and 1 in 4 incidents result in injury to civilians. If you compare this to attacks on police, 15% of those incidents resulted in the death of police. So quite interestingly, unconfirmed APLA attacks show a far higher percentage of incidents where police were killed or injured compared to civilians killed or injured. In confirmed APLA attacks, the number of civilian casualties, injured or killed, vastly outnumbers the number of police casualties. So that's fairly interesting. So what that basically means is that it does speak to the target selection to a certain extent, because again, it's civilians, and that's what we were looking at. So under the heading of target selection, it speaks to, was this type of target a target that APLA would potentially attack? And yes, the Highgate Hotel is a type of target that APLA could be said to have attacked. They can do things like this. It's not anomalous. It's not like they never attack civilians or anything like that. So that's not anomalous. Yes, I'm not going to speculate as to why there are more civilian casualties versus police. I'm not going to speculate on whether one target was easier than the other. I will simply state that APLA did kill civilians, and that's the reality.
All right, then let's turn to the last section of your report on page 13, which contains your actual conclusions. And let's start with your, high-level bottom line conclusion before we dig down into the individual data points again.
Sure.
What is your bottom line conclusion when you have to answer the question as to whether the Highgate massacre was consistent with the general modus operandi of known APLA attacks?
Sure. So in conclusion, based on our analysis, we believe that it is unlikely that the Highgate massacre would fit into the modus of either a confirmed or unconfirmed APLA attack. Although there are similarities with other APLA attacks, particularly with respect to the choice of targets and the number of perpetrators, we feel that is substantially outweighed by the anomalous choice of weapons and the failure to claim responsibility. So in looking at the data, it seems unlikely that APLA did this. Given our limitations, which we've already stated, I'm confident in saying the data does not fit the modus for APLA in this type of target and time period.
All right. Now let's look at the section where you compare the Highgate attack to known or either confirmed or unconfirmed APLA attacks. In relation to the number of perpetrators, what's your bottom line conclusion there?
So again, the number of perpetrators, the number of attackers, it does fit the general pattern of confirmed APLA attacks. For all incidents, the majority of attacks involve between 1 and 4 perpetrators. For confirmed incidents, this increases to 83%. So if we assume that the Highgate Hotel attack involved at least 2 attackers, there's no apparent distinction between Highgate and the incidents in our database.
And you reach a similar conclusion in relation to attack targets?
Yes. Again, as I think I've explained, the attack on a non-farm, non-mobile civilian, that is something that APLA did indeed do. Yes. So those 2 things do fit.
But in relation to the APLA confirmed claims of responsibility, take us through in some detail on this data point, please.
Yes. So this is one of the 2 things that we felt were particularly important to describing blame. As I've said, APLA members had come forward in the hearings and whatnot and said that they had done similar types of things, by which I mean they weren't afraid to come and say, yes, I killed these people in the church. I killed these civilians on the way to work in the morning. I'm giving examples of things that they would do. So the fact that there was no claim of responsibility does not fit the general pattern of confirmed APLA attacks. 15 of the 19 cases of non-farm civilian targets, so that's the same type of targets, did result in testimony before the TRC by APLA combatants. So essentially, APLA tended to claim responsibility. They claimed responsibility for 36 of the 64 attacks on our database, many of them involving multiple casualties. And as I think I've said before, 15 of the 19 incidences that involve targets of this time, APLA did confirm their involvement. So for us, the fact that they didn't is anomalous. It doesn't fit the modus. So that was a point of departure for us as well.
And let's also deal with the final data set, weapons used.
Sure. So, I mean, as we've discussed, the weapons used in the attack, specifically the use of AK-47s and tear gas, does not fit the general pattern of confirmed APLA attacks for targets of this type. In confirmed APLA attacks for any target, the predominance of these weapons for ballistic weapons involved the R4 and the R5 rifle. That's at 36%. Or 20% of the time they would use pistols and revolvers. Just a quick note there, you can use, if you have multiple attackers or even a single attacker, you can use a rifle and a pistol. So, grenades were used in 64% of the cases where explosive weapons were used. So that's 36% for R4 and R5 for this type of targets. Only 10% for AK-47s. And as I said, none from, I believe it was from 1992, used AK-47s on targets of this type. And when they did use AK-47s in this time period, it was, one was an attack on police, which, as we've explained, is treated differently to this. And one was attack in Johannesburg on civilians, children, I think it was, that they attacked. So the use of an AK-47 is anomalous in this instance. If APLA was following its general pattern, they would have used an R4 and R5. And then we come to, so the use of a grenade was, yes, they did use grenades. But then we come to the tear gas. And again, the tear gas is something that does stand out. APLA didn't use tear gas. And yet they used it in this attack. This is a dangerous attack. This is in the city. This is not the time to be trying a new technique. It's not the time to be in your heightened stress and the violence, to be fiddling with some sort of explosive smoke device that you're not confident with. So the fact that it had never come up before certainly stuck out for us. And like I said, the lack of claiming responsibility. The fact that the use of the AK-47, they didn't really use it at this time. And they didn't use tear gas. And based on that, as I said, we're confident that this does not match the modus of the confirmed APLA cases that we looked at in the time period.
Thanks, Mr. Tyrrell. So you've reached your conclusions on the basis of an analysis of the available data, and you're obviously not in a position to say with 100% certainty because you're confined by your data sets. But in conclusion, based on your analysis, what is your opinion? What is the bottom line conclusion that you would like to offer to this court?
So, as I've stated several times, our report indicates that this didn't match the way APLA operated in the time period. It didn't match the type of weapons that they used. And they didn't claim responsibility for it, which was pretty odd. And so fundamentally, although there are similarity with other APLA attacks, particularly with respect to the choice of target and the number of perpetrators, we feel that is substantially outweighed by the anomalous choice of weapons and the failure to claim responsibility. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think APLA did this based on our information.
Thank you, Mr. Tyrrell. No further questions, my lord.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
My lord, may we please have an adjournment for 10 minutes?
Thank you.
Thank you, my lord. Mr. Stewart, in your report on page 7, under limitations of the research, the second bullet point there's a specific indication, the third line from the bottom, it says all information on claims of responsibility were not available in the consulted sources. Can you just explain that for us?
Sure. Okay, so I had previously said that when we started this, we had overly optimistically, we kind of sat down, or to be more proper, I sat down and I came up with a whole list of different things that could potentially be useful. Things like, for instance, what were people wearing, what language, how good were their accuracy, by which I mean. And so I was perhaps naively assuming that we would have all this information for every single case. And the thing is, if you only have information, let's say, for instance, I've got a lot of information on 2 or 3 incidents, but I don't have that much information for another 4. If you don't have information that's common across everything, you can't compare them. So that's an acknowledged limitation, is that if we could have every single detail of every single incident, then obviously we could do a more comprehensive analysis. But that's simply not possible. It doesn't mean that that our analysis was flawed. It just means that this is the real world that we live in, and you don't always have access to all of the data that you might need.
Yes, thank you. I just want to find out as well, there was, after this attack specifically, there was a person who made a phone call to the newspaper who indicated that Carl Zimbiri was taking responsibility for this attack. And that was generally the way that APLA would claim responsibility for the attack. Were you aware of that?
So so I believe what you're talking about comes from the Creel statement. And I think one of the things that he said was that somebody from, I think it was Anla or something like that, had claimed responsibility, and then there was a phone call from this Carlos person who he mentioned. That sort of code name has, I believe Creel said, it was linked to APA and some extent. So yes, but that would not have been a confirmed case because it didn't come through the TRC. That's kind of how we would have seen that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So then I just want to take it through. So your finding or your conclusion is based on basically the report as well as the limitations of firearms.
Sorry, could you clarify?
Sorry, limitations of firearms. I mean that the types of firearms that were used.
Well, it's based on 4 fundamental things.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
But those 2 were the ones that swayed you to decide that it was not an APLA attack.
Yes, the lack of the claim and the type of weapons. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to see, we had Mr. Happy Litlapa Mpahlele testify, I apologize. On a previous occasion, it was on the 24th of March this year. And during that incident or during that testimony, I asked, my lord, it's at page 77 of the transcript of the 24th of March. And I inquired, I would just like to point out here that the Yellowwood Hotel attack, they found that AK-47s were used. So do you agree then that it is possible that AK-47s could have been used? Mr. Mpahlele then said, oh, definitely. And for that matter, our APLA units were not uniform. Some would have an AK-47, others would have R1, others would have a Panga, when you know there are not enough weapons. So it was not a standing army and with unlimited support of arms. So yes, we did not throw away AK-47s that we had because we switched to use R4s and R5s. Was this information taken into account in your analysis?
So just to clarify, are you asking that the testimony on the 24th of March, did we include that in our analysis?
Yes.
No, that wouldn't have been included
Okay.
because that would have, that wasn't a TRC document. It would have fallen out. We wouldn't have seen that, basically.
All right. Okay. Would that change your opinion in any way? Because in this incident, the Yellowwoods attack took place on the 20th of March, 1993.
Mm-hmm. So I would need to look at the specific details of that. All right, so, okay. So no, the way we based our findings based on what we found in the TRC. So I'm looking at our document here, and this is again, this is an acknowledged limitation. We're based on what we discovered and were told through the TRC process. So the TRC process said it was 1 times R5 rifle, 1 times R4 rifle, 1 times Uzi SM6 pistol, 1 times hand grenade, and 2 revolvers. So based on that, I mean, okay. So if we had seen in the TRC that they had used AK-47s at that time, you know, then that may have shifted things a little bit. But based on that information I'm reading here, that didn't come up. When did this attack take place, if I can ask?
93. 20th of March 1993.
Okay.
Fort Beaufort, Eastern Cape.
Yeah, so I mean, if there was another incident where an AK-47 was used in the same target type, in the time period, and it was confirmed through the TRC, then it would obviously influence our data to a certain extent, because then it would be to say that the AK-47 was used. But I would have to look, statistically speaking, how that would shift things. To see if it was a significant shift or not, because I didn't say that they never used AK-47s. I just said that for that specific target type to the TRC, we didn't come up with that type of thing. Yeah.
Okay. That information was actually obtained from the comparison of cartridges which were found at the Yellowwoods attack. So,
okay.
Just I must let you know that. Sorry, my lord, if I could have a moment. Okay. My lord, if I could refer to Exhibit AA, I have a copy here to please hand to the witness. That is the Truth and Reconciliation decision in respect of the applications of Mr. Ngamazana. Sorry, and Mbambu as well. We just wanted to see, there are certain, on page 2 of the document, there it lists all the incidents for which they applied for amnesty, these 2 individuals. And I just want to refer you to point 6. It's the attempted murder of Bruce Keatles, Robert Melville, and then Tutuzeli Simon Pelham with a machine gun at or near Nahoon Dam Turnoff, East London, on or about 25th of March 1994. I just wanted to find out, did you take this into account, this specific matter?
Okay, so we went through a number of incidents, so I cannot recall specifically if we did. However, can you clarify what the target was. Was it a moving vehicle? Was it? I'm sorry, I didn't
No,
quite catch that.
They were in a vehicle, but they were in a vehicle on that day, so I do understand that you distinguished it from the current matter. However, this specific incident, they were not granted amnesty for it because it was not sanctioned by APLA.
Yes.
Would that affect your decision at all?
No, it wasn't whether they were granted amnesty or not. It was the fact that they appeared and they said we did it. Sometime this okay. Obviously, I don't want to tell you very learned people about how the TRC process works, but the TRC can say yes or no. And if they said no, that didn't actually influence whether we considered it or not.
Mr. Mkashlele also gave evidence saying that on certain occasions, because of the breakaway faction of APLA, sometimes the APLA attacks were not, in fact, confirmed or approved by the head of APLA. Are you aware of that?
So, I would certainly okay. So I'm not aware of that specific incident, but I am aware that, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but essentially, in this type of organization, it's fragmented. You know, security police are after you, so to speak. One of the ways that you kind of combat that is you break into cells where you don't really communicate. So it's, I'm sure that may well be something that happened. I don't. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you for your testimony as well as for your report. It's very interesting, and I'm sure it will assist the court in coming to a finding in this matter. Thank you. My Lord, I have no questions.
As the court pleases. My Lord, we don't have any questions on re-examination, but since this is an inquiry, we wish to draw your lordship to the evidence that has been led before this honourable court. And Lord, let's start with the claim that an APLA person by the name of Mr. Carl Zimbiri owned the Citizen newspaper and claimed responsibility. The Lord will recall that we heard from the evidence of Mr. Lapa Mshashlele. That question was put to him on the 24th of March 2025. Lord, that's at page 57 of the transcript for that day, paragraph 10, and then again at page 61, paragraph 9. I put that question to him whether he knows this Mr. Zimbiri, who had apparently claimed responsibility. I'm not going to read the entire response because it is quite long. But Mr. Mshashlele says, first, who is Carl Zimbiri? If no one knows who Carl Zimbiri is, I don't think we should crack our skulls over it. And he says, well, he knows a Carl Zimbiri who played for Bloemfontein Celtics, was a goalkeeper in Malawi. But they didn't know him. And then the court asks Mr. Mshashlele, so is he just a fictitious character? And the response of Mr. Mshashlele is, well, until Carl Zimbiri comes and says, I am Carl Zimbiri, he is a fictitious character. We'll turn to the question of AK-47s. I'm going to draw your lordship to the evidence of Mr. Mshashlele. And this is the evidence he gave on the 20th of March. It's at page 52, paragraphs 11 to 13. And explains in some detail why from 1992 onwards they switched from AK-47s to R4s and R5s. Again, I'm not going to take you through the evidence, it would be too time consuming, but your Lordship will recall that he mentioned the dangers of having to bring in AK-47s from Tanzania and elsewhere. And he mentioned that R4s and R5s were produced locally by Arms Corps. And to quote Mr. Mshlalele, they decided to use Arms Corps as their local supplier. In relation to the Yellowwood incident, in which my little friend for the state says AK-47s were used, we would like a reference to that particular, whether it's in the amnesty transcript or the investigation docket, because wherever it is, I think it should be put up as an exhibit, because currently we don't have access to it. I can tell you that the list of weapons that are listed in the Truth Commission records includes one R5 assault rifle, one R5 rifle and magazine, one Uzi SM6 pistol, one F1 hand grenade. It looks like it might be 2 times .38 revolver. And indeed, it looks like more R5 and R4 rifles were used as well. No AK-47 was mentioned. We have just done a search of both the amnesty decision as well as the transcripts in the matters relating to this incident. The decisions are AM 3828/96, AM 6077/97, and AM 65391/97. There's no mention of AK-47s in any of those decisions. We've also looked at the transcripts of the amnesty hearing. It looks like this was on the 15th of April of 1998. And I believe that's day 9. And again, no mention of AK-47s. So from the research we've been able to do, we can't find any evidence of AKs being used in that particular incident. But we invite our colleagues to put up that evidence. If they have it now, they may do so, or at a later stage. Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you.
My Lord, in brief, the information was contained in the testimony given by Colonel van der Merwe, the ballistics expert. I do not have it at hand, but I will look for the exact reference and make sure that it is referred to tomorrow morning. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Dr. Turu, I think I can excuse you. Looks like council has exhausted their questions. Yeah.
Thank you, my Lord.
Well, thank you very much for your assistance.
Thank you very much, my Lord. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
My Lord, we would like at this stage call Captain Peterson just to give evidence regarding the investigation which has taken place between the last day of the hearing date and today.
Morning.
State your full names and what it is.
Vaughan William Peterson, my lord.
Any objection to the oath?
No, my lord.
You consider the oath binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will be in front of the court will be equally counted and representative?
Yes, I do. So help me God. Thank you, my lord.
Good afternoon, Mr. Captain Peterson.
Good afternoon, my lord. How are you?
No, very well, very well.
Good, good.
It's good to see you on your feet.
Yes, no, thank you, my lord. No, the doctor has given me a...
Don't do much damage to you.
Yeah, no, the doctor has given me a clean bill of health. I'm happy. My wife might not be, but I'm happy.
No, that's all that matters.
Yes.
Very well, Captain. Thank you. Council will just deal with the extent to which you have been able to follow up on some of the further issues that you deal with.
Thank you, my lord.
Captain Peterson, there was a query which needed to be followed up, and that was in respect of a list of Ascaris. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do, my lord.
Were you able to trace all of the Ascaris?
My lord, I traced, there was a list of 84 Ascaris. We were then informed of the 13, the list was received of 13 names of Ascaris that were placed at East London unit. With extensive investigation, we found we found the names or not the names, the ID numbers, and I started doing the tracing of that, my lord. The first one was Ascari XVN Vusani.
These are the Ascari you were able to trace.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
SVN Vusani is deceased. I did receive a copy of her death certificate. MS Vukazi, he was traced, and I obtained his statement 2 weeks ago. MP Olifant was also eventually traced. We found him in Vereniging. His statement was obtained as well. Then Mr. M.M. Sonchancha, he's deceased. I'm still awaiting his death certificate. On the Sonchancha details, my lord, we have another Ascari that was also mentioned as MT Ntombela. Now, on the ID numbers that I was able to find after really a long time of searching, both these ID numbers came to the same person. So as soon as we put in Nombela's ID number, it should shot us back to Sonchancha. So I presume that is the same. I don't think it's the same person, but they were definitely using the same ID number. They were also using the same service number that was allocated to them by the police then, which is very strange, but that's what we found. Then Mr. N. Matumba, I couldn't find any information on him. His service number didn't give us any ID number. We couldn't find him on the system. We couldn't find him on any. What I've done, my lord, is I've asked the traffic department to assist us with the tracing of these people with regards to traffic driver's licenses. That also just assists us a little bit more. But we couldn't find anything from them too on this Matumba. So Matumba, on our SAP systems, there's absolutely nothing as well.
Captain, I apologize. Could I just interject here?
Sorry.
The Ascari members that you were not able to trace,
Yes.
was that as a result of lack of identification numbers?
It's a lack of identification number as well as the lack of incorrect service numbers.
Yeah.
The service numbers that were then issued to them or force numbers then, a lot of these force numbers are duplicates to other members and don't exist at all on our system.
So you were only able to locate and speak to 3 Ascari, is that
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. There was also an instruction to assist in obtaining evidence from a person who was identified by Mr. Webber, who was allegedly resident in Grahamstown. Were you able to make contact with this person?
My lord, yes, I did eventually get hold of him. Mr. Webber did say to me that to find this man is going to be difficult. I didn't think it was going to be that difficult, but we eventually found him. He was supposed to meet with me on Friday last week. On the way to him, he said that he's not at home, he's not available. We were then supposed to meet on Saturday, the same excuse. What I've done is I've arranged with the detectives of Kanubi now that this afternoon at 3 o'clock they will go and pick him up and take him to the police station where I will meet him after 4 o'clock.
Thank you.
They already spoken to him, they've confirmed with me that they will pick him up and have him available for me.
Thank you.
Mr. van der Wit is the surname.
Van der Wit.
Herman van der Wilt.
Wilt.
Wilt, yeah,
I apologize.
W-I-L-T.
ILT. Okay, thank you. What other investigations did you pursue?
I tried to find more of the witnesses that were involved, like the Smiths and the Arnotts that were there, as well as there was a question raised that the 3 people that were found that were at the telephone booth could also possibly, a scenario was set that they could have been the ones that attacked as well. I couldn't find any of them. I couldn't find any of the Smiths. But 2 weeks ago, I received information that Mr. Arnott was treated at Frere Hospital.
Mr. Bruce Arnold.
Bruce Arnott, yeah. And I then followed up and I got hold of his wife and he said to me that he's in hospital. I've visited her. She said to me that he's in ICU in oncology unit. I went to the hospital and he was not in a good. Yeah, the nurse, the sister, refused me entrance because he wasn't doing very well, and they didn't have much hope for him because of the cancer. His whole body is full of cancer as well as the brain, and they were treating him to try and see if they could try and help him with the brain cancer. But yeah, at this stage, I then just made a mention of that in my statement that I did. I was there, but he's not in a good space. Yeah.
And then there was a witness who was at the theatre, the Guild Theatre. Were you able to consult with her?
Was that the lady working at the Guild Theatre?
Correct.
There was 2 ladies there. There was the cleaner and the lady. I couldn't find them either.
Okay. Have you been able to find anybody else in connection with this matter?
Only Mr. Arnott that I could find. And that was just because we put feelers out to the hospitals that any of the people that come there with the surnames and names report there that I was contacted regarding Mr. Arnott. So yeah, we haven't had anything else.
Thank you. I just want to confirm with you, we also wanted to locate Captain Null. Could you give us an update on that situation?
Yes, Captain Null is on pension now, but Captain Null is extremely sick with cancer. As we know, he couldn't be here the first time. And I have tried to contact him telephonically. I'm getting no answer. I then got hold of his previous commander, who said to me that they'll send a message through to Captain Null. I've had no feedback with that. But Captain now, according to his ex-commander, also said that he's not doing well at all, and physically he's not in a good place.
Thank you, my lord. I have no further questions.
As the court pleases. Captain, thanks for diligently following up on these tasks during the break between the sessions. Captain, I think we should bring the court into the picture as to why you followed up these different Ascari leads. Perhaps you can just indicate to the court why it is you felt necessary to follow up that particular line of investigation.
My lord, there was a scenario sketched that it could be the Ascaris because of the fact that they were on the weekend of the 1st of May 1993. They were given their retrenchments package as one should put it that way, when they received their final checks. And there was the thought that they could have been quite upset because of the different amounts that were allocated to people, and on that it was requested we just investigate to see if it's possible that they were involved.
And my lord, I believe that the list of the Ascaris, together with their payouts, my memory serves me correctly, was annexed to the affidavit of Teresa Alderman, but my team will provide the exhibit number and page number in due course. Now, in respect of the list of former East London members of the Ascari unit, Lord, I must just advise that Captain Peterson and the team for the state have helpfully provided us with that list. And you've mentioned, Captain Peterson, that of the 13 East London Ascari members on the payout list, you were only able to make contact with MS Fokazi, MP Olifant, and WG Twala.
That's correct, my lord.
And that you did take statements from these persons.
That's correct, my lord.
And in due course, those statements will be put up as exhibits. From what we understand, Captain, Mr. MP Olifant, in his statement, he conceded that he was a former APLA member. I see. My lord, I'm just corrected on that. My attorneys received a phone call from Mr. Letlapa Mshahlele, and he indicated that Mr. Olifant had made contact with him after he had been interviewed by Captain Peterson. So that's how we know that Mr. Olifant is a former APLA member. So for that reason, Captain, would you agree that it might be useful for this court to hear from Mr. Olifant?
My lord, I won't disagree with the court on that. I meeting him in person and chatting to him, if he was a part of the APLA, he said that to us. But he made it very difficult for us as well. He insisted on us talking to the hierarchy of the APLA veterans before he would sign anything. So it would be good to have, if I were to choose, I would rather go with Mr. Fokazi. If that would sort of, and the reason why I'm going to say that, my lord, not to not to object to what Kutvan is saying, is that I found Mr. Oliphant. He was very. He would go around in circles the whole time while you're trying to chat to you and speak to you. But if it's need be, he can be brought to court. I don't think that would be a problem.
Right. Well, it is our request, Captain, that we would like to hear from Mr. Oliphant, given that he was formerly an APLA member and then subsequently an Askari member. Why do you think we should hear from Mr. Fukazi?
The reason why I'm saying that, my lord, is that Mr. Oliphant said that he left the Askari unit in 1991. And you'll see in the statement, that's also what he said to us. However, when I questioned him on the fact that he actually received his check on that day, he said no, he received the check, but it was sent to Sanlam. And he was giving us different things the whole time. Where Mr. Fukazi, when I met with him, it was a straightforward talk. This is what we got, and I think that he would be able to give you a clearer picture on the workings of APLA and whether they were involved or not. That's my opinion, my lord. Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful, Captain. And then lastly, Mr. W.G. Twala. Should we hear from him as well?
My lord, Mr. W.G. Twala wasn't placed at East London. He says he wasn't placed here. He doesn't know how people can place him here. He was placed at Vlakplaas in Pretoria. He worked from there. They used to come up here a couple of times. He says he can count on his hands coming here. But they were never involved with working with the guys. They came here, they did what they had to do, and they went back again. But he was never placed here. He only came here at times to work with when they were sent to East London. And that's on his information. He left Vlakplaas, and he did say that he did receive the check at Vlakplaas. He also confirmed that although he can't remember all the names and all his previous colleagues, he did confirm that during that 1993, he couldn't say which date, but he did say it was 1993, that everybody did receive their checks at Vlakplaas. He says nobody got cash. It was checks given to each individual. And that is where my question came in with Oliphant, because Oliphant was giving us a different story. And Fukazi confirmed that, which Twala said, saying that everybody was at Vlakplaas and received the checks.
And do you know whether Mr. Twala was in any mission in East London during 1993?
He couldn't say during 1993, but he said there were times that they did come to the Eastern Cape. Yeah.
And I understand that when you put the scenario to him of a possible revenge attack on them being let go with such small payouts, that his response was something to the effect of, it makes sense.
He said his response was that he doesn't think that his response was, there's a different word that he used. He doesn't understand why the Askaris would attack the hotel, because everybody had received their checks and nobody was really unhappy. Although the discussion between them that nobody wasn't happy, they couldn't really voice it because there was always this thing of looking over your shoulder, who's going to take you out or who's going to kill you if you do voice your disapproval towards Eugene de Kock at that stage. He says, so although they were unhappy, they took what they could and they left. He says, but he can't, that was his opinion. He says he doesn't think that in any way that the Askaris could be involved. He says, but you must understand, one of his previous guys that were with him in the Askari unit was part of the Baha Church attack that was arrested. He said, and that's one of the colleagues that worked with him. He says, so it would be very difficult to say yay or nay. That was his words.
All right. It does seem to us that I think we should hear from at least two of them, namely Mr. Fukazi and Mr. Oliphant. And in discussions with our learned friends from the state, we'd like arrangements to be made so that they can testify in early September when we reconvene.
My Lord, I have contacted all three of them. I left messages for them on Friday. I left messages for them again on Saturday, as well as WhatsApps. I've had no reply back. But one thing I can say that Mr. Futkazi will return my WhatsApp or my message as soon as he receives it. Because as soon as I got hold of him and I got his contact number and I phoned him, he was in Cape Town. He got back to me. He was in Joburg. He got back to me when he was in London. He got to me. So, I do believe that they will get back. Mr. Twala also got back to me immediately. The challenge was Mr. Oliphant, but we'll keep on trying, my Lord.
I suppose out of an abundance of caution, perhaps we should issue subpoenas against them.
Yes, my Lord.
My Lord, the exhibit number for the Ascari payout list, that's Exhibit C, that's the affidavit of Alderman. It's Annex C at page 121 to 122. Okay. And then just finally from our side, Captain, I understand that you were following up on the whereabouts of Bayman Lombard.
My Lord, yes, we've been following up on that. We got, there was a Colonel Naidu from Interpol that was assisting us, but then she got very sick and she's been at home ever since. Then Wimpy Nell took over from her and he's been assisting me, but he's had absolutely no feedback from his counterparts in England. He phoned me last week on Tuesday or Wednesday to say that he's got hold of the counterparts. They are going out again to get the details. And then once they got the details, we must just be ready to go through Durko to arrange for the virtual meeting and things like that. But he will get back to me as soon as he does. I spoke to him on Sunday morning. He still hasn't heard anything back. But I do believe that he will let us know as soon as he has any details.
Thank you, Captain. No further questions, my Lord.
Is there any argument?
No further questions at this stage, my Lord. We have discussed the matter with our colleagues, and once we've wrapped up the majority of the evidence, then we would like to recall Captain Peterson just to assist us if there should be any further investigation.
Very well.
Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, my
For
Lord.
the moment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Lord, I see that it is almost lunchtime at the moment. Sergeant Ratters will be our next witness, which we will be calling. And if we can begin with him at, I'm not entirely sure how my Lord wants to deal with it, either at 2 o'clock or 2:15. Thank you, my Lord.